Okay, so let's get into activity 1, which is about semantic humor. Think about whether the humor comes from the strategic use of a reference, of connotation versus denotation, of a metaphor or an idiom in the following examples. Identify which semantic feature is being used in each picture and why it adds humor. So you can find the activity sheet for this particular activity in the unit in which you found this video. You can pause the video right now and try and figure out which of these represents either reference, connotation versus denotation, metaphor, or an idiom. And then you can come back, press play, and we'll go through it together. So let's go through number 1. My husband's, let's go through, the first one. Number 1. This would be an idiom, right? And because it says, I don't like, so all the people I don't like can kiss my ass. And when we say kiss my ass, we don't mean it literally, right? It's a figurative meaning, and so it's an idiom. So what it means is something like, you're upset with them and you want something negative for them. So it's an idiom. In the second one, my husband's wife is freaking awesome. This represents a reference, right? Because the referent is supposedly you, if you're the wife. Okay, number 3. Is there a veterinarian in the house? Our soprano has a frog in her throat. This represents an idiom because a frog in her throat means that the person can't sing very well or can't speak. Okay, you can't literally have a frog in your throat. Okay, number 4, life is like photography. You use the negatives to develop. This is a metaphor because what it's doing is that it's using negatives and develop, which are things that you can do with photography, and the meaning is being assigned to life. Okay. Number 5, oh crap, job creators. Here we are using a connotation. Job creators is actually a more positive word for something like enslavers. Okay. And number 6, it says, the only thing as sharp as this jacket is the cheddar on my platter. And so this is a metaphor because you're using the meaning of sharp as in cheese, right? The sort of this very distinct flavor of cheddar cheese, for example, and using that and associating it with the jacket, which is supposed to be pretty stylish. So hopefully that was fun for you. We're going to go on to activity 2 now, which talks about semantic word relationships. So at this point, what you can do is also pause the video again, take out the activity 2 sheet, which is located in the unit where you found this video, and take a second to figure out which of the examples on the right-hand side can be matched with the semantic word relationship, which is listed on the left. Note that some of these, there's more of these examples than there are of the semantic word relationships, so some of them are going to have two examples. Okay, so you can pause the video, otherwise let's go over it together right now. So examples of synonyms are words that have similar meanings, and this would be content and happy. We also have antonyms, words that have opposite meanings, and this would be truthful and dishonest. There are relational opposites, which are antonyms, but these antonyms have a relationship. So husband and wife is an example of that because they are opposites, but they do have a relationship. Complementary words are antonym pairs in which only one word can hold true at one time. So this could be like alive and dead. Okay. Could also be like asleep and awake. You can only be asleep or awake, right? Not both. Homonyms, these are, and if you use your morphology knowledge, right? Homo, the prefix, meaning the same. Words that sound the same but have different meanings. So this would be bank and bank. Gradable antonyms, which are antonyms that are on opposite sides of a continuum. So this would be big and small, also hot and cold, right? Big and small exist on a continuum, as does hot and cold, but you can't say that about other antonyms that we talked about here, such as husband and wife, or even truthful and dishonest. Doesn't really fit on a continuum. Converse antonyms are two items in a symmetrical relationship, so teacher and student would be an example. Heteronyms, right? Heteronyms, again, using your morphology, hetero meaning different. So words that are spelled the same but pronounced differently. So lead and led would be an example. Digest and digest. Digest being the book, like Reader's Digest, versus digest, meaning to sort of after you've eaten food. Metonyms, words that do not represent their literal meaning in the context of some phrases. So lend me your ear, right? That's, again, idiomatic. We don't literally mean to give us their ear. What we mean is to pay attention, to hear, to listen. We also have that man is a pig, right? The man is not literally a pig. What we mean to say is that it's metaphorical in that we are associating sort of the negative ideas that we have about a pig and associating that with the man. And then entailment, the meaning of the words is logically related to its previous meaning. Chicken and chick, right? Chick is the shortened version of chicken, and it derives from the root word of chicken. Same thing with pig and piglet. Piglet is derived from sort of that root word pig. So, earlier we talked about culturally defined word meanings, and I showed you some examples when we talked about idiomatic phrases, where I showed you some idioms from different countries, where it was difficult for you to understand what the idiom meant, because the meaning was assigned. So I want to sort of extend that example and give you sort of test that out, test the theory out, where the meaning of words depends heavily on your knowledge of culture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge you with a South African joke. English is widely used in South Africa, so you'll be able to read it. I'm going to read it for you out loud, so you'll be able to understand me when I say it. But I want to test out how much of it you understand and how much meaning we find is culturally based. Okay. So as I said, I'm going to read it. You can follow along, or read it on your own as I go through it. What I want you to do is think about all of the words that you don't understand or which is not familiar to you. Okay? Okay. Guy breaks down in his Datsun Bucky out in Brakpan. A Subaru pulls up next to him. Ikse, come, I'll summer tow you with my Subaru, but if I drive too fast, flash your lights and hoot so I can slow down. Off they go, pull up to a robot. Ferrari pulls up next to the Subaru, tunes, wanna die, Ikse? Revving engines, robot goes green, and they haul it down the road. Dude standing on the side of the road sees them tearing past, neck and neck. Phones his chummy, hey Boot, I've got a story to tell you. I just saw a Subaru and Ferrari dicing neck and neck, Ikse, like 300 kilometers an hour. Chummy says, pretty hip, eh? Dude says to him, that ain't the story. There's a Datsun Bucky right behind them, flashing and hooting. He wants to overtake, China. Okay, so if you take a second, look through the joke again. I can't imagine, in all of the years that I've been teaching, nobody has ever gotten this joke. If you're not South African, you probably don't get it. And let's talk about why. Okay, so there are a number of words that exist in this joke in the US English, right? So a number of words that you'll see that we have in the US, we use. But in South Africa, they have different meanings. So the first one is robot, okay? And a robot is another word for a traffic light. Hoot. Hoot means to honk. China. China is a word that is used to say like bro or buddy, sort of. Dice means to compete against one another, right? And then tunes is another way of saying to say. Okay, it's a sort of a slang term. There's also some words in this joke that are unique to South African English. The first one is a bucky. And a bucky is, I've shown you a picture here, it's sort of an old form of a truck in South Africa. So in South Africa, you don't say truck, you say bucky. There's also some words that are Afrikaans, that they actually belong to another language that is spoken in South Africa, but they're so common that they've sort of been assumed into English and are used in English, right, by English speakers. So summer means try, ekse means I say, chami means friend, and boet means brother. Okay, and lastly, there are some places and products that are unique to South Africa, such as Brakpan. Brakpan is a place in South Africa that is sort of the sense that it should conjure is like the out in the boondocks, one would say, right, or out in a place where there's really nothing. Datsun is also another place or product, a product that's unique to South Africa, and that's Datsun car. So some of you might know about Datsun cars if you are familiar with other countries, or if you've traveled or lived elsewhere, or maybe are a little bit older, because I think Datsun was a car that was driven in the US some years ago. But for those of you who are relatively younger, that might be, or haven't traveled, that might be not so familiar to you. Okay, so the whole joke here, there's also some cultural meaning that doesn't actually come from any of the words in this joke. And what that is the understanding that when somebody honks their horn and sort of flashes their lights, in South Africa, what it means, if somebody's doing that to you behind you, what it means is they want to pass you. They want to sort of overtake you, right? And so the joke is funny because a Ferrari, which is a really fast car, that's another connotation you need to have. A Subaru, which is also a racing car, when they're racing, you have this bucky or this truck behind them, which is known to be sort of like a, slow, old car, flashing and honking because as if it wants to overtake or pass the racing cars. And that's what was so funny to the guy who was standing on the side of the road, because he didn't understand that what had been discussed by the people in the cars was that he wanted the Subaru to slow down, right? He didn't want to take over. So that's why the joke is funny. But again, because of all these culturally defined meanings, even though the joke is in English, you don't understand because you don't have those cultural connotations. And again, this will be similar to, this sort of experience that you've had right now, that is something that your English language learners are going to be experiencing all of the time, and that is why they need you to be as explicit as I've been to describe why this joke is funny, right? All of the different parts, the words, the vocabulary, the places and products, also the sort of cultural, pop culture aspects.